in France, we've seen some appalling scenes there of racism, and the far right seem to think they're in a good position. John Mullen is joining us from Paris. How you doing, John?
Not so bad, not so bad.
Now, look, I'm just going to play a video of something that happened in the French Parliament on Thursday.
Les prévisions météo indiquent une détérioration significative du climat. Pas du tout. Ces violences.
Quel est le député qui vient de prononcer cette phrase? Pardon? Mais... Non, mais c'est pas possible. Attendez, mes chers collègues, non mais qui... Voilà. Je fais une suspension de séance de 5 minutes.
Now, that was a video of Carlos Martins Belongo of the NUPES coalition being heckled by a member of the RN party, the far right party, and he was saying in French, "Return to Africa." What's happened since that incident on Thursday?
Well, all I can hear on the video is go back to Africa. But apparently he said either he should go back to Africa or they should go back to Africa. These are pronounced identically in French. And so he's saying he was talking about the African refugees who were the subject of the debate. But he may have been talking about the black member of parliament that we saw speaking there, or he could easily have done it ambiguously deliberately. In any case, he has been suspended for 15 days from parliament because of this, and even his own party, the fascist National Rally, has not really dared to protest too much about that. And this is a hard racist. I mean, this is a guy, last year there were 300 minors, 300 unaccompanied minors who were refugees who were accepted in his town, and he spent his time talking about the invasion of the rats. So, you know, you see the sort of hard Nazi he is, yeah. And he's caused himself a little bit of trouble there because even some members of parliament, fascist members of parliament, have said that he's gone too far. So, you know, I mean, this is all in a context where the far right, the National Rally, which used to be the National Front, are working very hard to take up space in national politics. What you can see behind me is the counter demonstration, symbolic counter demonstration yesterday, because National Rally had their conference in Paris. So we had a counter demonstration, and perhaps you heard a little bit about their conference in Paris.
So there's 89 front national RN party or right-wing fascist party MPs, aren't there? I mean, it's a lot of MPs, isn't it?
It is. Well, I mean, it's been a terrible year from that point of view, because the National Rally got 13 million votes at the presidential elections for Marine Le Pen, and then shortly afterwards at the legislative elections, they moved up from a dozen and a bit MPs to 89 of them. And of course, they're also boosted by the recent victory of Italian fascism. And so, you know, they're hoping that their time has come. And they have their, as I said, they have their national conference. They elected a new president, only 26 years old, Jordan Bardella, nasty piece of work, brought up in the poorer parts of Paris.
Marine Le Pen stood down, and this new guy, he's in his 20s. I mean, what's he like? What does he say? What's his background?
Well, it's not a big political change. Marine Le Pen is preferring to concentrate on her next presidential bid, and Jordan Bardella is very much her protégé, if you like. But it's a political play. He came from a fairly poor family in the suburbs of Paris, so he's not a millionaire like the Le Pen family. And he's pretty sharp. He's been very much boosted by the media. He's been on every talk show you can imagine, smart suits, the whole lot. So he's a very, very dangerous guy. And he was elected by 85% of the National Rally members. And he just gave his first speech fighting against France, which is making French identity a four-letter word. And so, he's probably going to the fascists have always had this, how openly fascist should we be? And he's probably going to go more in that direction because last year the National Rally actually managed to get outflanked politically to their right by Eric Zemmour, who openly talked about reconquering our country from these dangerous, hordes of whatever. So it's all looking like they'll get even worse. Unfortunately, there is some opposition. I mean, there's no real tradition of counter demos to fascist events in France. So it was good to see that one yesterday, even if there were just a couple of hundred of us. And there's a lot more of that to do.
I mean, the left is quite strong at the moment. I mean, the protests that have been going on for the past couple of weeks, but the climate that we're in, it does offer an opportunity to the right, and PR gives them quite a big voice, doesn't it? So that is a danger in the sense of PR, isn't it?
I don't think there's any real likelihood of proportional representation coming in France anytime soon, really.
But it's more. I mean, but you have the fact that there are 89 far right MPs. We wouldn't have that in the UK. But is it? I mean, isn't France and you say Italy indications that a more proportional system could be a problem when we have this economic situation?
Well, I mean, in France, this is because you have a two-round system. That is to say, you can vote for, there are loads of candidates in the first round and only two, almost only two in the second round. And so that means that once parties get past that sort of 10, 15, 20%, they've got a good chance of getting members of parliament. I mean, I think really, the most important thing is to look at what the fascists in France don't have. And what they don't have is solid party structure at a local level. Very, very weak locally. Huge electorally, very, very weak locally. And they know that, and they just appointed a guy to be in charge of building local structures. And he says we need to have more public meetings. We need to go towards people. That's the guy he's saying, Julian Sanchez, he's called. And so really, I think the left need to get back into having counter demonstrations for every public meeting. They do very little local stuff. The National Rally, they're rather worried about this. They haven't had a decent national march for many years. They used to have every 1st of May, they'd have 5,000, 6,000 people on the street. They don't do it anymore because it's too small. So, right. They have a lot of weaknesses. And of course, it's terrifying to see 13 million fascist votes, but they have a lot of weaknesses. But we need to build back up the tradition of intervening locally every time. Even if sometimes there's 20 of you on a picket for a meeting with 100 people, well, that's life. We've got to get the tradition back in because there's little tradition of that for various reasons in France.
And do you think that the left can gather more support against this new leader? I mean, how do you see things playing out in the next few months?
Well, I'm afraid I left my crystal ball on a train, so I'm not going.
Come on, John. Come on, can you go and find it?
Well, the problem is the tradition of anti-fascism in France. That is that there's a huge section of the radical left, in particular the revolutionary left, who say, yeah, fight fascism, join the revolutionaries. And we know that that's not good enough because we need loads and loads of people who have no interest in revolution, who hate fascists, to get onto the streets with us. So there's that. And then on the other hand, there's a lot of tradition on the left saying, oh, well, the fascists will decline automatically if we sort out the problems of unemployment and stuff like that. And again, this is, I think, so these are the two big mistakes. So there's a lot of arguing to do to get back into a tradition which did exist in the 90s what they used to call at the time democratic harassment. And it wasn't the revolutionaries who were leading it was some fairly soft left people, but who had a good idea of the National Front. And the result was that they pushed the National Front to a corner, and it split, and we had a wonderful 10 years when they were pretty weak. So I think it's about rebuilding the argument for counter demonstrations, very, very broadly based. You know, you hate capitalism, you don't hate capitalism. As long as you hate the fascists, that's good enough for me. Come with us. I think that's what I mean. It's not that I have any huge influence to make this happen, but that's what I think is needed.
Okay, so sort of like the anti-Nazi League, sort of
Very
thing.
similar, yes. Although
Yeah.
you know, I mean, it's probably better in France not to say that you have a good example from something that the English did.